The inside story on the issues that affect you and your community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
On November 1st, 29-year-old Brittany Maynard followed through with a doctor-assisted suicide in Oregon because her inoperable and incurable brain tumor. Her decision not only sparked controversy, but also opened the door for serious, if uncomfortable, discussions about end-of-life issues. Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. No matter what you think about the ethical and moral issues involved with doctor-assisted suicide, the very public case of Brittany Maynard can function as an invitation to an important conversation about how we want to handle the difficult issues surrounding death and dying. Local 12 reporter Liz Bonas prepared this report a week ago.
The thoughts that go through your mind when you find out you have so little time is everything that you need to say to everyone that you love.
This video Brittany Maynard put on YouTube about her request to choose her death date and die with dignity has had more than 9 million views. It also has had responses asking her to reconsider what was her November 1st death date from those such as Joe Nyer.
Dying with dignity includes living with quality.
Nyer has a similar brain condition, and through this video on YouTube seen on Al Jazeera TV, he says he's already lived longer than expected. Joe wrote Brittany an open letter. He expressed thoughts that are much like those of Janet Montgomery. She's a hospice worker. She wants to say to Brittany,
let us take care of you. Let us honor who you are. Let us support your mom and your dad. Let us take the burden. This is the circle of life.
She points out that something good has already come from all this. Many of us are now having a conversation about dying, which is something we don't ordinarily do. But in addition to that, she also says it can help all of us learn that we have choices about where we want to die and the quality of our life at the end of it. In fact, Montgomery regularly invites people to check out this video, which hospice experts put together. It is called Conversations of a Lifetime.
I want my life to end peacefully.
The conversation video has ideas and suggestions about how to make sure others know your personal wishes about dying.
Everybody is going to die. It doesn't have to be a horrible death. It can be a good death. And while it's sad, it can be quite joyous as well.
Brittany has just announced that right now does not seem like the right time. But in terms of timing, Janet Montgomery says she hopes that Brittany will reconsider how she wants to die. And also remember,
being able to say goodbye is such a gift. Most of us don't have an opportunity to say goodbye to the ones we love.
I am joined now by Janet Montgomery, the Chief Marketing Officer for Hospice of Cincinnati. Janet, welcome to Newsmakers.
Thanks, Dan.
Good to have you here. I might point out that that package was done when it was a question whether she was going to go through with it, but right. She in fact did go through with it. So that's why there was a little bit of incongruity there at right. The end. But why don't you think people want to talk about this issue? Is there any reason that we put all of this off, except the obvious?
Honestly, I think in America we think that death is optional. It's sort of in other...
The statistics are not good about that.
100% mortality, yeah. But I think in other countries people treat end of life differently. They celebrate caring for your loved one in the circle of life and the circle of family and extended family. In the United States we don't do that. I think, you know, we're afraid to talk about it. We don't really want to face our mortality, and if we do face our mortality we need to be prepared with what are we going to do about it.
Well, you know, a lot of people, you were saying that in other cultures it's really a family experience.
Right.
In our society, a lot of people end up in either the hospital or a very heavily medical environment. And, you know, sometimes that happens fairly quickly. Mm-hmm. Why doesn't it at least take place there?
You know, 70% of us want to die at home, but only 30% of us do. Old age is a relatively new concept to us. We have antibiotics, we have interventional medicine, we have all kinds of things that keep us alive. And so oftentimes we don't know what we that we have an option, and so physicians and hospitals are really designed to treat. And it's the wise person who says, wait a minute, tell me what this means and what's my quality of life going to be. And so we get kind of into a bit of a cycle where we feel like we don't have options, and we feel like the physicians and everybody's telling us this is the way to go.
But doctors know.
Doctors do know.
Why don't they encourage people more?
To talk about end of life and to face that. They're really trained to save lives, and they're trained and they've been in that mode. That's changing. We're training doctors how to talk about end of life more with patients and families. But you know, the physicians that are practicing now haven't been through that new training, so they have a treatment modality, and our healthcare system pays for that treatment.
Well, yeah, that's a whole other question here. So if people are going to begin these conversations of a lifetime, as Hospice of Cincinnati has tried to encourage people, what are the essential things? What are the basic things? Where do you start that?
Yeah, so if you go to conversationsofalifetime.org, there's a starter kit that the Conversation Project created that asks you, what do you want at the end of your life? Do you want to be involved with the decisions? Do you want to die at home? Do you want to know everything about your disease, or do you want someone else to manage that? So it takes you through a series of questions where you can make those decisions. I think it's really important to, number one, talk to your doctor, and also realize it's not one conversation, it is a series of conversations that you'll have with your healthcare team. The most important thing is to really consider, what do you want at the end of your life? What are your goals? What are your needs? And go through that really thoughtful process with your family. Decide what you want, and then decide who is going to speak for you, who's going to be your surrogate or your proxy, your power of attorney, so that, and that they understand what you want, so that they can be your voice if you become unable to speak for yourself.
Because at that moment you've tipped over into a legal environment.
That's right.
And you need document. It can't just be conversations. It also has to be some very clear documentation, right?
Exactly. And you know, it can change. So it depends on where you are in your health trajectory. So anytime you have a document that is a living will, or a medical order for life-sustaining treatment is another document, as you enter the healthcare system, they'll review that and say, is this still accurate? Do you still want this treatment or lack of treatment? And that's really your decision. And I think the biggest issue to understand is that it's your want. If you want everything done, you need to document that. If you only want to be comfortable, and you can say, if I get to a point where I can't communicate and I can't do the things that I love, then here's what I want. It's your decision.
You know, around this whole discussion, and certainly with the Brittany Maynard thing, situation, but you see this in lots of this area, it's the word control.
Yeah.
People want to control how the end comes. In hospice environment, what do you say to people about that?
So Brittany Maynard was afraid of what she was going to become. She was afraid of the pain and suffering. And I think it's really important to know that in hospice, we relieve that pain and suffering, and when we keep you comfortable and make sure that you're getting what you need and what you want, and you are in control. You're in control of how much medication you have. You're in control of what you can do. We keep you as active as possible so that you're independent. And so you are in control, and your death is with dignity. I think most of the time when people approach end of life, they want four things. They want to be pain-free. They want to be in control. They don't want to be a burden to their family, and they want to know that their life has meaning. And so when you enter the end of life, those are things that hospice can offer you.
You know, so often I think people think that hospice is that place that you go the
Right.
last week, the last few days.
Mm-hmm.
But actually hospice care is much more expansive than that, and I've seen it personally with my own mother.
Right.
That it's not just right at the end.
Right, and hospice isn't a place to go. That's a misconception. Hospice is both a benefit of Medicare and Medicaid, and it's also a philosophy of care. So it is for the last 6 months of life, and it's for those people who were diagnosed with a terminal illness, substantiated by 2 physicians, and it's care wherever you call home. It's care in the nursing home or it's care at home. And it's a team of caregivers. It's people who come and teach your family how to take care of you and provide support and your medical needs and the medications you need and all the equipment at home as well. Sadly, only 40% of patients, or I'm sorry, 40% of our patients are in hospice for less than 7 days. But it's a 180-day benefit. Longer, if you outlive that 6 months, you can still stay in hospice.
Your background is, you're not a doctor, I don't think you're a nurse.
I am a nurse.
You are a nurse.
Yeah.
What's it like working for hospice on a personal level for you?
Yeah. It's a good question. When I first joined hospice just 4 years ago, it was, I mean, we cry almost every day because the stories are so touching and quite beautiful. It takes a bit of a toll on you at first. I think in the first 6 months I realized, wow, this is really heavy work. I mean, I talk and read about death and dying every day. But the work we do is so important, and it is so incredibly inspirational. And the people that I work with and the nurses that we come in contact with and the aides that absolutely love what they do. And when you hear, I mean, I don't go anywhere without somebody saying, oh, my mom, my sister, my brother was in your program. I think it's just so important. A friend of mine told me that her mother has Alzheimer's, and at the end of life, they saw the grace that her dad developed in caring for her mom, and what a gift that was, that they would have never seen that had they not had the opportunity to go through this journey. And it is an important journey, and I wish I had it for my dad. If it was in the Health Care Act today, it would be seen as an entitlement. Hospice is an incredible benefit and free to anyone, even if they don't have insurance and no means. We don't turn away anybody for lack of ability to pay.
It's really important to
Yeah.
know. I want to make sure people know how to get in touch with you and how to find the starter kit for the conversations.
Yeah.
We're out of time for this conversation, but this is only to get people starting to talk
That's right.
themselves. To find out more about Hospice of Cincinnati and access to all the resources about the conversations about the end of life, check out the website at hospiceofcincinnati.org or call 513-891-7700. Janet, thank you for being
Thanks,
here this
Dan.
morning, and thank you for the work you do.
Thank you.
Stay tuned. After the break, a special opportunity this Veterans Day.
I was caught up in something so vast, so unknown and different. For the moment, I was lost.
Welcome back. This week, the country stops to remember the contributions of millions of American citizens through military service. With an all-volunteer Army, a smaller percentage of the population serves today than in the past. One of the challenges is to help all of us understand what combat means. Story. The story of individuals is always the best way to come to grips with an unknown. That's the point of a performance that will be in our area this coming week, known as Ponder Anew, a World War II warrior's story.
The only time in 51 missions I ever saw anything like it. We were headed right into it. I was stunned. My lips grew tight. I sucked breath between my teeth. I was climbing right into it. The 47 felt like it quit flying, like I was suspended and couldn't move. The damn flak was all around me.
I am joined now by the creators of Ponder Anew, a talented couple from Nashville, Carol Ponder and Robert Kiefer. Carol, the daughter of Herschel Ponder, is an award-winning singer of Americana who specializes in a cappella balladry. We'll hear some of that. And a great storyteller. Robert Kiefer is an actor and director who specializes in creating one-person shows. He has worked with Carol producing her concerts and recordings. Welcome to Newsmakers. Welcome to Cincinnati.
Thank you, Dan.
It's really good to have you here, especially this week. Carol, this is your father. So the Ponder Anew is about your father's Herschel Ponder. So
yes.
When did you become aware of that there was documents dealing with his World War II experience?
My father never talked about it. There were a few funny stories he would tell until 1989 after he retired. And he sat down on July 4th with big legal pads and a bunch of pencils and wrote his memoir. And just wrote for hours every day for weeks and didn't stop. After that, he gave it to us to read, and he began to go to reunions. He began to get back in touch with people, but up to that point, he'd never talked about it. And
that's so common. Of so many veterans of whatever war, it takes years, decades to come to grips with this. So, as you put this together, you have that documentation.
Yes.
What was your approach with that documentation? How did you use the documents to get to a performance?
I early decided I had to be Herschel. We actually take you into combat in the air. The show is very cinematic in the mind of the audience. It's reader's theater. It's just up there, just us sitting on stools with music stands and the scripts.
And you're actually, we could see it before, you're actually reading. You haven't committed to memory, which obviously you could if you wanted to. You're a professional actor.
Reader's theater, yeah.
And why that approach? What makes that special?
It's a storytelling art.
Yeah.
And reader's theater honors the storytelling. And Herschel was Appalachian. The answer to a yes or no question is a 20-minute story.
All right now.
Well, yeah,
It
is.
Also, by using the scripts and by keeping the words in front of us, we are constantly reminded on stage and in the audience that it is Herschel's story. It is my father's specific story.
And that's what I was thinking as I saw this and also read about it, as a viewer or an audience member, that's what I'd be reminded of. It's not just the two of you making this up.
No, and
you're sticking to the true.
You're free as an audience member to create any scenario in your mind. However you want that battle to look like, that's what it's going to be.
So, okay, your father wrote this down, but then what did he say about it? What did he say about that experience?
Well, the first thing he said was, "Here, read this."
Yes.
And he said that for 2 or 3 years. He still wouldn't talk about it with us much. His daughters.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to
us.
figure out.
Yeah.
Okay.
He wanted us to read it so we would understand why he was the way he was, the good things and the difficult things. He did suffer from PTS for years, and there are some stories from my mother's point of view.
How would that have been named?
Shell shock, probably still.
Yeah.
But
from
people
World War I.
were mostly just expected to suck it up and go on, which he did. He built a wonderful life, but there was a lot of pain. And
did you know Herschel?
Very well. Knew him for 30 years.
Okay.
Yes.
So this isn't just somebody who wrote something. This is
no.
So how do you think the war impacted him? His daughter is one thing, but how do you think that war, what did it do for or to him?
It made him, it made it very difficult for him to trust. He went away to war as a 20-year-old boy who had a wonderful upbringing in the mountains of western North Carolina. And in a little over a year, he was trained to be a professional killer, and a very, very good one. And then he was sent home, says, "Okay, thanks, goodbye." And I think he spent the rest of his life with his back to the wall.
With his back to the wall?
With his back to the wall. When you're up there in a fighter plane, you don't want anyone coming in behind you. A going away shot is the easiest one there is. That's from the memoir. You don't want anyone behind you.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a very difficult man.
Okay.
We had a great respect for each other.
What did he do in his private life? How did, after the war, you say he built this good life for his family. What did he do professionally? What did he do?
Well, he started out to teach history and coach basketball. My mother ended up teaching English and theater for 40 years.
It's a very good way to start out, by the way.
But yes.
Especially the basketball.
But he decided that he couldn't feed a family of 5 on 2 teachers' salaries, so he went to Southern Railway, where he did very well. But he also was very active in the Episcopal Church, very active in politics, very active in Asheville Community Theater and other theaters in the area. So he had his job, and then he had all these other things. I come from an arts family on both sides, as well as Appalachian on both sides.
And Asheville is a very arts-centered community.
It always has. It was in the 50s when I was born. So.
So he had a dramatic sense. He had a theater sense. So even as he's writing,
he was already an actor before he joined the Army. He grew up painting pictures, acting on stage, listening to music, singing in choirs.
As a boy, he actually did some vaudeville in Asheville. So in the early part of the 20th century.
Did he volunteer in World War II, or was he drafted?
No, he volunteered.
So he volunteered for the. Did he? It would have been the U.S. Army Air Corps at that time.
Yes.
Did he intend to go into the Air Corps, just go into the Army?
No, he joined the Army Air Corps.
So the Army Air Corps, he wanted to be...
Yes.
Okay.
And there's a little segment that says, I was in the Army Air Corps. Would I fly? And in what? He'd only been in a plane once before in his life. So he didn't know. They might make you a crew chief, they might make you a pilot.
And what did they make him?
Fighter pilot. P-47 Thunderbolt fighter bomber pilot.
Okay. And he was 6'2", and you're supposed to be 6 feet or under to be a fighter pilot, so the doctor lied about his height. Because Dad said, I want to be a fighter pilot.
So many people lied about age, height, all sorts of things in order to do what
they wanted to do.
And they believed needed to be done.
Yeah.
So did he eventually become comfortable with talking to you about, rather than just writing?
Yes.
Yes. Eventually, we could talk about it. And he started, as Carol said, he started going to reunions after he retired, 45 years later, seeing these people that meant so much to him.
Did he stay in contact with the people that he had served with?
Yes, those are the people he was meeting at the reunions, and they began a very lively correspondence.
But not until 1989.
Yeah. Not until he wrote the memoir.
Yeah.
What do you think, this is about World War II.
Yes.
What do you think that says to, what do you think this says to people who maybe served in Vietnam, or served in Afghanistan, or served in Iraq, or are still there today?
This story speaks directly to them. It's why we've taken it up at the end of our 40-year professional lives as performing artists and teachers. We've picked it up because of the response we get from the audience. Last Monday, we did a show at the VA in Murfreesboro in Tennessee. A Vietnam veteran stood up and began talking about things he said for the first time, and eventually began to cry.
Wow.
And then a young man from Afghanistan stood up and said, you opened up something inside me I didn't know was there. And it's because it's Dad's story.
I want to make sure people know how to enjoy this, and then we're going to hear from you.
Okay.
So if you'd like to attend, there are going to be 2 performances this week, one on Thursday, November the 13th at the old courthouse in Lebanon, Ohio at 7 o'clock in the evening, and then the next night on Friday, November the 14th at Prince of Peace Church, a lot of irony here, at Prince of Peace Church in Over the Rhine on Ray Street, again starting at 7 o'clock. Both of these are open and free,
Yes.
and they're made possible by the Heroes Fund, which is also got a fundraiser coming up right after that, and you can get in touch with them. And Carol, would you take us out on some music?
I will. An old mountain song. Going across the mountain, oh, fare you well. Going across the mountain, you can hear my banjo tell. I've got my rations on my back, My powder, it is dry. I'm going across the mountain. Missy, don't you cry. I expect you'll miss me when I'm gone, what I'm going through. When this fighting's over, I'll come back to you. Going across the mountain, oh, fare you well. Going across the mountain.